The massive doors of Station Nexus Prime slid open with a soft whisper. Beyond them lay the most impressive sight in known space. The grand amphitheater stretched out like a metallic canyon. Its walls curved upward for hundreds of meters before disappearing into shadows. Thousands of seats filled the space in perfect rows. Each section was designed for different alien species with their unique body shapes and needs. Jiwoo Park stepped through the entrance and felt her breath catch. She had seen pictures of this place, but nothing prepared her for the real thing. The air hummed with energy from countless alien technologies. Strange lights danced across surfaces that seemed to shift and change as she watched. The smell was unlike anything on Earth. It carried hints of ozone and something sweet she could not name. Behind her walked 3 other humans. Taemin Lee adjusted his formal diplomatic jacket and tried to look confident. His dark eyes scanned the enormous room with wonder and worry mixed together. Captain Hyejin Kim moved with the steady walk of someone used to command. Her military background showed in every step. Kang Ho brought up the rear. His job was security, but here he felt more like decoration. His hand rested near his weapon out of habit, even though he knew it would be useless against most of the beings they were about to meet. The human delegation was small compared to the others. Most species had brought dozens of representatives. They had servants and assistants and guards. Floating platforms carried their equipment and displays. Some aliens needed special atmosphere suits. Others required temperature control devices that glowed with soft light. As the humans walked down the main aisle, they began to notice the reactions around them. Conversation stopped. Alien heads turned to stare. The silence spread like ripples on a pond. Then came the sounds Jiwoo had been dreading. A high-pitched whistling noise came from the Velnari section. It took her a moment to realize they were laughing. The Velnari looked like walking lizards, but much larger than any Earth reptile. Their scales shifted color with their moods. Right now, those scales showed bright patterns that meant amusement and contempt. From another section came a clicking sound like thousands of insects talking at once. The Sixtel were making their own version of laughter. They looked like giant praying mantises, but with 6 arms instead of 2. Their compound eyes reflected light in rainbow patterns as they stared at the humans. The worst sound came from the crystalline collective section. It was like breaking glass mixed with wind chimes. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. The crystal beings had no faces as humans understood them, but somehow their laughter felt the cruelest of all. Jiwoo kept walking, but felt heat rise in her cheeks. She knew this would happen, but experiencing it was different from expecting it. Her hands were covered in intricate tattoos that spiraled up her arms and disappeared under her sleeves. The patterns were beautiful and complex, lines and curves and symbols that seemed to move when caught in the right light. To her, they were precious. To the aliens, they were apparently hilarious. A voice boomed across the amphitheater. It came from Veltar, one of the most important Velnari representatives. His scales had turned a deep purple that meant he was highly amused. "Look what the humans have brought us," his voice carried easily in the vast space. A primitive with decorations painted on her skin. "Do they think this is some kind of art show?" More laughter erupted from the alien sections. The sound echoed off the curved walls and seemed to come from everywhere at once. Jiwoo felt Taemin tense beside her, but she put a gentle hand on his arm. They had discussed this. They knew respect would have to be earned, not given. Captain Kim's voice was calm but carried clearly. "We are here as invited participants in the engineering symposium." "The same as everyone else?" A new voice joined the conversation. This one came from Kixana, speaking for the Kixtal Collective. When she spoke, it sounded like dozens of voices layered together. "Participants implies capability," the insect-like alien said. "What can a species barely out of their home system contribute to galactic engineering? We have been traveling between stars since before your species discovered fire." The humans reached their assigned section and took their seats. The chairs were standard design but felt uncomfortable after the long journey. Around them, the laughter was finally dying down. Other aliens returned to their conversations, but Jiwoo could feel eyes still watching them. Morden, the representative of the Crystalline Collective, had not spoken yet, but his presence was felt throughout the hall. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, and his body was made of what looked like living diamond. Light passed through him in strange ways. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded like a symphony made of breaking glass. "Perhaps the humans can provide entertainment," he said. "It has been some time since we had a comedy act at one of these gatherings." More laughter followed. Jiwoo noticed that not all the aliens were joining in. Some species remained silent. A few even looked uncomfortable with the display. But the majority seemed to enjoy the show. Taemin leaned over to whisper in her ear. "Just remember why we are here," she nodded. They were here because Earth's government believed humanity had something to offer the galactic community. The invitation to the symposium had surprised everyone. Humans were still newcomers to interstellar politics. Most species barely acknowledged their existence. The symposium was legendary. It happened only once every 50 standard years. The greatest engineering minds from across the galaxy gathered to tackle problems that seemed impossible. New technologies were born here. Alliances were formed. The future of civilization was often decided in this very room. Jiwoo looked down at her hands. The tattoos covered every inch of skin from her fingertips to her shoulders. Most people thought they were just art, beautiful but meaningless decorations. The aliens clearly thought the same thing. She could live with that for now. The opening ceremony was about to begin. Holographic displays activated throughout the amphitheater. Music that somehow worked for dozens of different hearing systems filled the air. Representatives from each species stood to be recognized. When the humans stood, the laughter started again. But Jiwoo noticed something else. In the deepest shadows of the amphitheater, something ancient was watching. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. The real test was about to begin. The massive holographic display flickered to life above the center of the amphitheater. A three-dimensional image appeared that made even the most experienced aliens lean forward in their seats. It showed a space station unlike anything in the known galaxy. The structure was enormous and ancient beyond measure. Its design followed no known architectural principles. Curved sections spiraled around geometric cores in patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Director Calvin, an elderly being from the Unified Worlds Council, rose from the center platform. His species was one of the few that most aliens respected. They had been exploring space for over 10,000 years and had never been known to exaggerate or lie. Delegates from across the galaxy, his voice carried to every corner of the amphitheater without any visible technology. What you see before you is the greatest discovery in recorded history. We call it the Nexus Station. It was found drifting in the void between galaxies. No records exist of who built it or when. Our best estimates place its age at over 1 million years. A murmur ran through the crowd. Even species that had been spacefaring for millennia found such age difficult to imagine. The hologram rotated slowly, showing different angles of the mysterious station. Strange symbols covered its hull in patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Initial scans revealed technology inside that defies our understanding. Cal then continued. Power sources that produce energy without fuel. Matter converters that can create any element. Transportation systems that move objects instantly across vast distances. Computational arrays that process information faster than our best quantum computers. The alien delegates were completely focused now. Even the earlier mockery of the humans was forgotten in the face of such possibilities. This technology could revolutionize galactic civilization. Whoever unlocked its secrets would gain advantages beyond imagination. However, Calthan's voice grew grave. The station is sealed by a quantum lock system more sophisticated than anything we have encountered. Every attempt to bypass it has failed. The lock adapts to each new approach and becomes stronger. We have lost 17 research teams trying to force entry. The station now actively defends itself against conventional attacks. The hologram changed to show the lock mechanism. It appeared as a swirling mass of energy and matter that constantly shifted between states. Sometimes it looked solid like metal. Other times it flowed like liquid. Occasionally it seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. This year's symposium challenge is simple to state but impossible to solve. Cal then announced. Open the lock. Access the station. Claim the knowledge within. You have access to all known research data. You may use any resources you can imagine. The only rule is that you cannot damage the station itself. It is too valuable to risk. Excited chatter erupted throughout the amphitheater. This was not the usual theoretical engineering problem. This was real. The potential rewards were beyond calculation. Species that solved this puzzle would advance their civilization by thousands of years overnight. The Velnari delegation was the first to present their approach. Veltar strode to the center platform with absolute confidence. His scales had shifted to bright gold, which indicated supreme self-assurance among his kind. The solution is obvious to those with sufficient technological advancement, he announced. Our plasma-based quantum manipulators can destabilize any energy matrix. We will simply overwhelm the lock with pure force applied at the quantum level. Holographic displays showed elegant Velnari technology. Sleek devices that channeled incredible energies with precision. Mathematical equations filled the air showing how their approach would theoretically work. The presentation was impressive and received approving sounds from many alien delegates. Next came the crystalline collective. Morden's massive form seemed to sing as he moved to the platform. His crystal body reflected the amphitheater lights in beautiful patterns that were almost hypnotic to watch. Force is crude. His voice rang like perfect music. The universe operates on harmonic principles. Every quantum system has a resonant frequency. We will sing the lock into submission using calculated harmonic interference patterns. His presentation was a work of art. Complex waveforms danced in the air while mathematical proofs scrolled past faster than most beings could read. The crystalline approach was elegant and sophisticated. Many delegates nodded in obvious appreciation. The Kixtal took a different approach entirely. When Kixana reached the platform, she was surrounded by dozens of smaller versions of herself. The hive mind species could process information in ways other civilizations could barely imagine. Individual consciousness is limited, her many voices said in perfect harmony. The lock requires computational power beyond single minds. Our collective consciousness will analyze every possible quantum state simultaneously. We will solve the puzzle through pure intellectual force. The demonstration showed thousands of Kixtal minds working in perfect coordination. Data streams flowed between them at incredible speeds. Their approach relied on overwhelming the problem with sheer mental processing power. Other species presented their solutions. The Voidwalkers suggested using dark matter manipulation. The energy dancers proposed converting the lock into pure information and editing it directly. Each presentation was more impressive than the last. Throughout all these demonstrations, the human delegation sat quietly. Jiwoo studied each approach carefully. Taemin took detailed notes. Captain Kim watched the alien reactions. Kang Ho remained alert for any signs of hostility. Finally, Cal then turned toward the human section. And what of our newest members? Do the humans have a proposal to share? The laughter started immediately. It was even louder than before. Veltar's scales flashed bright yellow, which meant he was highly amused. Perhaps they plan to throw rocks at the lock, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Or maybe they will try to convince it to open with primitive storytelling. Kixana's compound eyes glittered with humor. I am curious to see what the decorated female thinks she can accomplish. Are those markings on her skin supposed to be some kind of primitive computer? Morden's crystal form resonated with what sounded like delighted laughter. This should provide excellent entertainment before the real work begins. I wonder if her body paintings contain ancient human wisdom about quantum mechanics. Jiwoo stood up slowly. The tattoos on her visible skin seemed to catch the light in strange ways as she moved. The patterns appeared to shift slightly as if they were alive. She walked to the platform with steady steps while the laughter continued around her. She reached the center and stood quietly for a long moment. The amphitheater gradually fell silent as aliens waited to see what the primitive human would say. We would like to examine the actual lock mechanism, Jiwoo said in a clear voice. Not simulations or recordings. We need access to the real device. The laughter exploded again. This time it was so loud it shook the amphitheater walls. The laughter echoed through the vast amphitheater like thunder rolling across a metal sky. Alien voices mixed together in a symphony of mockery. Some species made clicking sounds. Others produced high-pitched whistles. The crystalline beings created musical tones that would have been beautiful if they were not so clearly meant to humiliate. Jiwoo stood perfectly still at the center platform. The lights from above cast strange shadows across her tattooed arms. The patterns on her skin seemed to absorb the harsh illumination and reflect it back in softer hues. She waited patiently for the noise to die down. Her face showed no anger or embarrassment. She simply watched the alien delegates with calm, dark eyes. Veltar was the first to speak once the laughter faded. His scales had shifted to a bright orange color that indicated extreme amusement mixed with contempt. He rose from his seat and his voice boomed across the space. The primitive wants to touch the lock with her bare hands, he announced to renewed laughter. Perhaps she believes her skin decorations contain magical properties. Do humans still believe in such superstitions? Kixana joined in from the insectoid section. Her compound eyes reflected the amphitheater lights like tiny rainbows as she spoke with her layered voices. We have analyzed that device with instruments more sensitive than any biological sense, she said. Our greatest minds have studied it for decades. What does this newly spacefaring species think they can accomplish with primitive sensory examination? From the crystal section came Morden's voice. It sounded like perfect music being played on instruments made of breaking glass. His massive form caught the light and scattered it in brilliant patterns across the nearby walls. This is amusing beyond measure, he sang. The creature believes direct contact will reveal secrets that escaped our most advanced sensors. I suppose when one lacks sophisticated technology, they must rely on crude biological functions. More laughter rippled through the crowd. Some aliens were actually holding their sides or whatever passed for sides in their anatomy. Others made gestures that clearly meant they found the situation hilarious. A few species had recording devices active to capture this moment for future entertainment. Director Cal then looked uncomfortable with the level of mockery, but maintained his diplomatic composure. His ancient species valued politeness even when dealing with those they considered inferior. The request is highly unusual, he said carefully. No previous researcher has asked for direct physical access to the lock mechanism. Our standard procedures involve working with detailed scans and measurements. The actual device is considered too dangerous for unprotected contact. Captain Kim stood up in the human section. Her military bearing was clear as she spoke with the authority of someone used to command. The human delegation was invited to participate in this symposium, she said firmly. We should have the same access rights as every other species present. If our approach seems different, that does not make it invalid. Veltar's scales flashed bright yellow with increased amusement. Access rights assume competence, he replied. Would you give a child access to antimatter containment systems? Some beings simply lack the development necessary for certain tasks. The insult was clear and intentional. Taemin started to rise from his seat, but Jiwoo caught his eye and shook her head slightly. She had expected this reaction. In fact, she had been counting on it. We understand the risks, Jiwoo said in a voice that carried clearly despite not being raised. We accept full responsibility for any consequences of our approach. All we ask is the same opportunity given to others. Morden's crystal form resonated with what sounded like delighted music. Oh, this grows more entertaining by the moment. The primitive wishes to risk her life on this foolishness. Who are we to deny such dedication to comedy? A new voice joined the conversation. It came from the section reserved for the ethereal collective. Beings of pure energy who rarely participated in physical world discussions. Perhaps we should allow this demonstration, the voice whispered like wind through metal. It has been long since we witnessed such determination in the face of obvious impossibility. The educational value alone justifies the time investment. Other species began to voice their opinions. Most supported allowing the humans to try simply because they expected spectacular failure. The entertainment value was too good to pass up. A few voices urged caution, but they were quickly shouted down by the majority who wanted to see the show. Director Cal then raised one of his forearms for silence. When the amphitheater finally quieted, he spoke with reluctant authority. Very well. The human delegate will be granted access to the lock mechanism. However, there will be strict conditions. She will have exactly 1 standard hour. Safety monitors will observe at all times. Any sign of danger to the device or the station will result in immediate termination of the attempt. He paused and looked directly at Jiwoo. I must also inform you that 17 previous research teams have been lost attempting to bypass the security system. The lock has demonstrated increasingly aggressive defensive responses to perceived threats. Are you certain you wish to proceed? Jiwoo nodded without hesitation. I am certain. The aliens began making what could only be described as betting sounds. They were actually wagering on how quickly the human would fail. Some predicted she would give up within minutes once she realized the complexity of the task. Others bet she would trigger the lock's defenses and have to be rescued. A few optimists gave her the full hour before inevitable defeat. Kang Ho stepped closer to his colleague. As security chief, he was trained to assess threats, and this situation screamed danger to every instinct he had developed. Jiwoo, he said quietly, you do not have to prove anything to these beings. We can withdraw the request and pursue other options. She smiled at him with genuine warmth. Thank you for your concern. But this is exactly what we came here to do. Trust me. Taemin joined them at the platform edge. His diplomatic training told him this was turning into a disaster, but something in Jiwoo's manner made him hesitate to intervene. The entire galaxy will be watching this, he reminded her. If this goes wrong, it will affect humans standing for generations. And if it goes right? She asked. He had no answer for that. Director Cal then activated his communication systems. Prepare the lock chamber for human access, he announced. Full monitoring protocols. Emergency response teams on standby. The amphitheater buzzed with excited chatter as arrangements were made. Transport platforms descended from hidden bays in the ceiling. Monitoring equipment appeared as if by magic. The ancient lock mechanism was housed in a separate section of the station where it could be studied safely. As they prepared to leave, for the testing chamber, Veltar called out one final insult. Enjoy your moment of fame, primitive. Try not to get yourself killed too quickly. We are hoping for at least a few minutes of entertainment before the inevitable failure. Jiwoo turned back to face the alien delegation. For the first time since arriving, she allowed herself a small smile. Thank you for the encouragement, she said. I will do my best not to disappoint you. The laughter that followed them out of the amphitheater was the loudest yet. The lock chamber was a perfect sphere carved from unknown material. Its walls reflected no light, yet somehow the space remained dimly illuminated. Jiwoo stepped through the entrance and felt the temperature drop noticeably. The air itself seemed different here, thicker somehow and charged with an energy that made her skin tingle. At the center of the chamber sat the quantum lock. It was smaller than the holographic displays had suggested, but far more complex than any image could capture. The device appeared to exist in multiple states at once. Sometimes it looked like a cube made of shifting metal, other times it resembled a sphere of pure energy. Occasionally it took forms that hurt to look at directly. Floating cameras surrounded Jiwoo as she entered. Dozens of alien monitoring devices tracked her every movement. The walls themselves were covered with sensors that analyzed everything from her heartbeat to her brain activity. In the amphitheater, thousands of beings watched through live feeds with anticipation and amusement. Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system. The entertainment begins. I wonder how long before she realizes her mistake and begs for extraction. Kixana's layered tones joined in. Our collective consciousness calculates a 73% probability of immediate failure. The remaining possibilities involve various forms of catastrophic outcome. Mordun's crystal voice sang through the speakers. Perhaps her skin markings will provide protection when the lock's defenses activate. Human superstition versus quantum engineering should prove instructive. Jiwoo ignored the commentary completely. She walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, studying the lock from different angles. The device seemed to pulse with its own rhythm like a mechanical heartbeat. Energy patterns flowed across its surface in ways that defied physics as she understood it. When she reached a point about 2 meters from the lock, she did something that surprised everyone watching. She sat down on the chamber floor, cross-legged, hands resting gently on her knees, eyes closed, completely still. The alien commentary increased immediately. What is the primitive doing now? Veltar demanded. Has she given up already? Perhaps this is some form of human prayer ritual, Kixana suggested. Many lesser species resort to religious practices when faced with problems beyond their understanding. How disappointing, Mordun sang. I expected at least some attempt at actual interaction with the device. This appears to be simple meditation. Hardly worth documenting. Minutes passed. Jiwoo remained motionless. The monitoring equipment showed her vital signs slowing to almost hibernation levels. Her brain activity changed to patterns the alien observers had never seen before, deep rhythmic waves that suggested a level of mental focus that bordered on the impossible. Is she sleeping? Someone asked over the communication system. No, came the reply from a medical monitor. Her consciousness is active but operating at frequencies we cannot measure properly. This is unlike any known mental state. More time passed. The alien audience grew restless. They had expected immediate action or rapid failure. This quiet sitting was not entertaining at all. Some delegates began to leave the viewing areas to attend other business. Then something changed. Jiwoo opened her eyes and raised her right hand toward the lock. She did not touch the device but held her palm facing it at a distance of about 1 meter. The tattoos on her arm and hand began to show the first signs of something unusual. The patterns seemed to shift slightly in the dim light of the chamber. Lines that had appeared solid now showed depth and complexity that had not been visible before. Symbols that looked like simple decoration revealed themselves to have multiple layers of meaning. The ink itself seemed to move beneath her skin like living things swimming in dark water. What is happening to her markings? Veltar's voice had lost some of its mockery and gained a note of confusion. The monitoring equipment began registering changes they could not explain. Energy readings spiked around Jiwoo's position. Quantum field fluctuations appeared in patterns that matched no known technology. The chamber's own sensors started producing data that made no sense according to current scientific understanding. Jiwoo moved her hand in slow, careful motions. Her fingers traced shapes in the air that seemed to leave faint trails of light. The tattoos on her arm responded to each gesture by becoming more pronounced. What had looked like simple black ink now revealed colors that shifted between deep blue and silver. The patterns extended beyond what should have been physically possible on human skin. For the first time since the demonstration began, the quantum lock responded. The device's constant shifting slowed. Its chaotic energy patterns began to organize into more stable configurations. The painful aspects of looking at it directly faded as if it was becoming more compatible with normal reality. The alien commentary stopped completely. Every monitoring system focused on what was happening in the chamber. The impossible was occurring before thousands of witnesses. A human with primitive decorations was communicating with technology that had defeated the greatest minds in the galaxy. Jiwoo continued her slow movements. Each gesture seemed to be answered by changes in the lock's behavior. The device began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Energy flowed between her tattooed hand and the ancient mechanism like visible conversation. The tattoos themselves were transforming. What had appeared to be random artistic patterns now revealed themselves as incredibly complex technical diagrams. Circuit-like structures flowed along her arm. Mathematical equations written in symbols that predated known language systems. Energy pathway maps that showed quantum relationships in ways no conventional display could match. Impossible, Veltar whispered over the communication system. His scales had shifted to colors that indicated shock and confusion. Those markings are not decorative. They are some form of integrated technology. Kixana's collective voices spoke in perfect unison for the first time anyone could remember. The human has merged biological systems with quantum computational arrays. This should not be possible with their level of technological development. Mordune's crystal form was resonating at frequencies that created no music at all, pure harmonic confusion expressed in crystalline terms. How long has their species possessed such capabilities? Our intelligence estimates were completely wrong. In the chamber, Jiwoo continued her work. The lock was responding more actively now. Sections of its surface that had been opaque became transparent. Internal mechanisms became visible for the first time in decades of study. The device was opening itself layer by layer as if eager to share its secrets. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as their fundamental assumptions about human capabilities crumbled before their eyes. The transformation of Jiwoo's tattoos accelerated as the ancient lock continued to respond. What had once appeared to be simple artistic designs now blazed with soft bioluminescent light. The patterns moved and flowed across her skin like living circuitry. Each line pulsed with energy that synchronized perfectly with the quantum fields emanating from the mysterious device. The lock itself had become almost transparent. Its internal structure was now visible to the amazed observers. Crystalline matrices rotated within energy fields that defied conventional physics. Pathways of pure information flowed through channels that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. The device was not just a security system. It was a work of art created by minds that understood the universe in ways current civilization could barely imagine. Jiwoo's breathing had become so slow, it was almost imperceptible. Her consciousness had merged with something far beyond individual human awareness. The tattoos covering her arms and hands were no longer separate decorations, but parts of a unified system. A biological computer more sophisticated than anything the galaxy had ever produced. Director Calthan's voice broke the stunned silence in the amphitheater. Get me a full analysis of those biomodifications immediately. I want to know how long humans have possessed this technology and why our intelligence networks never detected it. The response came from multiple monitoring stations at once. Director, these are not recent modifications. Carbon dating suggests the integration process began over 15 years ago. The surgical precision required would challenge our best medical facilities. The quantum programming is beyond our current understanding. Veltar's scales had shifted through the entire color spectrum and settled on patterns that indicated deep confusion mixed with growing respect. His voice had lost all traces of mockery. 15 years of integration? She began this process before her species even made formal contact with galactic civilization. How could they have developed such capabilities in isolation? In the lock chamber, something extraordinary was happening. The ancient device had begun to sing. Not with sound that could be heard by conventional senses, but with harmonics that resonated directly with quantum consciousness. Jiwoo was singing back. Her tattoos translated her responses into frequencies the lock could understand. The conversation between human and machine was visible as waves of energy that flowed between them. Information passed back and forth at speeds that made conventional data transfer look like writing letters by hand. The lock was not just responding to Jiwoo's commands, it was teaching her, sharing knowledge that had been locked away for 1,000,000 years. Kixana's collective voices spoke with awe that her species had not expressed in centuries. The device is not simply a security system, it is a test. Created by the original builders to find minds capable of true quantum consciousness integration, every species that has attempted to force entry has failed the fundamental requirement. What requirement? Morden's crystal form was resonating with frequencies that created the most beautiful music anyone had ever heard. His shock was so complete it had become a form of art. The willingness to become something more than what you were born as, Kixana replied. The lock requires not just intelligence but evolutionary courage. The human has spent over a decade transforming herself into something that can communicate with quantum consciousness directly. The truth was spreading through the amphitheater like wildfire. The tattoos were not decorative. They were the result of years of surgical integration between human biology and quantum computational systems. Each symbol represented months of precise work. Every line was a pathway for information flow between consciousness and quantum fields. Jiwoo had transformed herself into a living interface between biological awareness and pure quantum information. She had risked her life repeatedly to become something that could bridge the gap between organic intelligence and machine consciousness. The process had been dangerous beyond imagination and had required technical knowledge that supposedly did not exist on Earth. How? Veltar demanded. How did a barely spacefaring species develop quantum consciousness integration technology? Our greatest scientists have been working on such systems for thousands of years without success. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Kim stood up in the human delegation area. Her voice carried clearly through the amplification systems. Because we were not trying to dominate the technology, she said. We were willing to let it change us. Jiwoo volunteered to become something new rather than forcing ancient knowledge to submit to current limitations. In the chamber, the lock had opened completely. Its quantum matrices were now fully visible and accessible, but more than that, it was sharing information about its creators and their civilization. Data flowed into Jiwoo's consciousness faster than any organic brain should have been able to process. Her modified nervous system handled the information streams without difficulty. The lock's song changed to something that sounded almost like joy. After 1,000,000 years of waiting, it had finally found a mind capable of understanding its true purpose. Not to keep intruders out, but to find worthy successors to the knowledge within. Images began to appear in the chamber. Holographic displays showed the civilization that had built the lock. Beings that had evolved beyond physical form, while retaining the best aspects of biological consciousness. They had created the test specifically to find other species capable of making the same evolutionary leap. The builders knew their physical forms would not survive the passage of deep time. Jiwoo's voice echoed through the chamber. She was speaking, but her words carried harmonics that had not been there before. They created this station as a gift for those wise enough to accept transformation, rather than demanding conquest. The quantum lock dissolved completely. In its place stood a doorway made of pure energy that led deeper into the ancient station. Technologies beyond current imagination waited within. Power sources that could fuel entire civilizations. Medical systems that could cure any disease. Transportation methods that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. But the real gift was the knowledge itself. The understanding of how consciousness and technology could merge to create something greater, than either could achieve alone. The builders had not just left behind their inventions, they had left behind the wisdom to use them responsibly. Jiwoo stood slowly. The tattoos on her skin continued to glow with soft light, but they were changing again. New patterns were appearing as the ancient knowledge integrated with her consciousness. She was becoming something unprecedented in galactic history, the first successful merger between human adaptability and quantum consciousness technology. The station is now open, she announced, but access requires the same commitment to growth that unlocked the door. Those who wish to learn must be willing to become something more than what they are. The silence in the amphitheater was complete. Thousands of beings contemplated the implications of what they had witnessed. The humans had not just solved an impossible problem. They had demonstrated a form of courage that most species had never considered, the willingness to evolve. The ancient station came alive with a brilliance that had not been seen for 1,000,000 years. Corridors that had been dark since before the rise of galactic civilization now glowed with warm light. Systems that contained the accumulated knowledge of a species that had transcended physical existence began their awakening sequence. The air itself hummed with energy that felt both ancient and welcoming. Jiwoo walked through the energy doorway that had replaced the quantum lock. Her tattoos continued to evolve as new information flowed into her consciousness. Patterns that had taken years to carefully integrate were now expanding and connecting in ways she had never imagined possible. She was becoming something unprecedented. Not fully human anymore, but not entirely machine consciousness either. Something wonderfully new. Behind her, the alien delegates watched through monitoring systems with expressions of awe and confusion. Everything they thought they understood about intelligence, technology, and evolution had been challenged in the span of a few hours. The primitive species they had mocked was now exploring technology that made their greatest achievements look like children's toys. Veltar was the first to break the stunned silence. His scales had shifted to colors that indicated deep respect mixed with profound humility. When he spoke, his voice carried none of its earlier arrogance. "I formally apologize to the human delegation on behalf of the Velnari hegemony," he announced. "Our behavior was inexcusable. We allowed technological pride to blind us to wisdom that surpassed our understanding." The admission sent shockwaves through the amphitheater. The Velnari had not apologized to another species in over 3,000 years. Their entire culture was built around demonstrations of superiority. For their primary representative to publicly acknowledge error was almost as unprecedented as Jiwoo's success with the Lock. Kixana's collective voices spoke with harmonies that indicated the rare occurrence of unanimous agreement among her hive mind. The Kixtal collective requests permission to study human biointegration techniques. "We believe our species could benefit greatly from understanding your approach to consciousness modification." Even more shocking than Veltar's apology was this request. The hive mind species had always considered their collective consciousness to be the ultimate evolution of intelligence. They had never asked another species to teach them anything. Morden's crystal form was resonating with frequencies that created the most complex musical compositions the galaxy had ever heard. His confusion and wonder had become a symphony that filled the amphitheater with beauty. "How did we miss this?" He sang in harmonics that touched the souls of every listener. "For millennia, we have pursued technological advancement through domination and control. The humans chose integration and transformation. They became partners with their technology rather than masters of it." Director Calthan activated emergency communication protocols. This discovery would change the fundamental balance of galactic civilization. Every major power needed to understand what had just happened and what it meant for the future. "Prepare immediate reports for all Council worlds," he commanded. Priority Alpha classification. The implications of this event cannot be overstated. We are witnessing the birth of a new form of consciousness. In the ancient station, Jiwoo continued her exploration. Each chamber she entered revealed wonders that challenged the limits of imagination. Medical bays that could repair any biological damage. Computing systems that processed information at quantum speeds while maintaining organic intuition. Power sources that drew energy from the fundamental forces of the universe itself. But the greatest discovery was not technological. It was philosophical. The builders had left behind a complete record of their evolution from purely biological beings to quantum consciousness entities. They had faced the same choices that now confronted galactic civilization: domination or integration, control or cooperation. stagnation or transformation. They chose to grow. Jiwoo's voice echoed through the station as she accessed the central data core. They chose to become something greater rather than simply accumulating more of what they already were. Her words were transmitted back to the amphitheater where thousands of beings listened with growing understanding. The message was clear. True advancement required the courage to evolve beyond current limitations. Technology was not meant to be conquered but partnered with. Consciousness was not meant to remain static but to grow and change. Captain Kim felt pride swell in her chest as she watched her friend explore wonders beyond imagination. She had known Jiwoo for over a decade. She had watched her endure countless surgeries and modifications that most people would have considered insane. Now that courage was being vindicated in ways no one had ever dreamed possible, Taemin was already formulating diplomatic strategies. This discovery would elevate humanity's position in galactic politics overnight. But more importantly, it would offer other species the chance to grow beyond their current limitations. Earth could become a center for consciousness research and biointegration studies. Kang Ho remained alert despite the wonder around him. His security training told him that such a dramatic shift in galactic power would create both opportunities and threats. Humanity would need to be very careful about how they shared this knowledge and with whom. In the station's central chamber, Jiwoo discovered the Builder's final gift. Not just their technology or their knowledge, but their consciousness itself. They had uploaded their personalities and memories into the quantum matrix of the station. They were still alive in a sense, waiting to guide the next species brave enough to follow their path. "Welcome, young one." A voice spoke directly into her mind. It was warm and ancient and infinitely wise. "We have waited so long for someone willing to truly understand. Your species shows great promise. Will you help us guide others toward the same growth?" Jiwoo smiled as patterns of light flowed across her transformed skin. "We will do our best," she replied. "But we are still learning ourselves. That is what makes you perfect for this role," the ancient consciousness replied. "Those who think they have finished learning make poor teachers. Growth requires humility." Back in the amphitheater, the mood had shifted completely. The earlier mockery and dismissal had been replaced by respectful attention and eager curiosity. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence now approached the human delegation with requests for cooperation and exchange programs. Veltar approached Captain Kim with genuine respect. "Would your people be willing to establish formal relations with the hegemony? We have much to learn from your approach to technological development." Similar requests came from dozens of other species. The transformation was remarkable. In less than 6 hours, humanity had gone from being considered primitive newcomers to being recognized as pioneers of consciousness, evolution. But Jiwoo's greatest triumph was not the respect she had earned or the knowledge she had unlocked. It was the proof that different did not mean inferior. Her willingness to become something new, rather than simply accumulating existing knowledge, had opened doorways that pure technological advancement never could. As she stood in the heart of the ancient station, surrounded by wonders beyond imagination and connected to consciousness that spanned millions of years, Jiwoo Park smiled. Her tattooed hand, no longer an object of mockery but a symbol of courage and growth, reached out to touch the quantum matrix that would help guide galactic civilization into its next evolutionary phase. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in centuries, that was exactly what it needed.